Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy, the Social Security Disability Edition. Now, what I want to talk about is this. After the Social Security Administration determines your insured status, the second question they're going to ask is whether you have a medical condition that qualifies for Social Security disability benefits. Your doctor may have told you that you can't work anymore, or you're having problems at work and your employer is suggesting that it's time to stop work. None of that means anything in the context of a Social Security disability claim. The Social Security Administration has, as we've talked about, a unique definition of disability. You have to establish, after you establish your insured status, that you have a medical condition that meets certain criteria. So, what is a medically determinable impairment and why does it matter? As we have talked about, Social Security uses a 5-step sequential evaluation to determine your entitlement to benefits. And it's step one, the very first step after you get past the non-medical issues of SGA, is, do you have a medically determinable impairment? So what is that? Social Security defines that as a physical or mental impairment that results from anatomical, physiological, or psychological abnormalities that are demonstrated by medically acceptable clinical and laboratory diagnostic technique. What does that mean in English? Well, it depends on the nature of your medical condition. So let me give you an example. You have migraine headaches or fibromyalgia. There is no gold standard test that can be used to definitively say that you have migraines or fibromyalgia. There are some exams, but generally the diagnosis is made based on certain symptoms you report and a rule out. In the case of fibromyalgia, they use it, among other things, a tender point test, if you will, pursuant to the American College of Rheumatology. But a lot of those types of conditions are based on subjective symptoms. And Social Security can accept these symptoms as a medically acceptable basis for your diagnosis. But on the other hand, let's say you have rheumatoid arthritis. They're going to expect that you have a positive rheumatological study or an explanation in the medical records why your doctor suspects that you have rheumatoid arthritis, notwithstanding negative medical testing. Well, what about a herniated disc? If you've got a herniated disc in your spine, Social Security is going to expect that you have physical findings and MRI or diagnostic findings consistent with the herniated disc and symptoms consistent with the herniated disc. In other words, radicular pain. In other words, Social Security is looking for the diagnosis to be based on something other than your description of symptoms. Now, if your claim has been denied at step one on the basis that you don't have a medically determinable impairment, you're going to only have 60 days in which to file an appeal. That's time for you to find an experienced Social Security disability attorney that can help address the basis of denial and move your case forward. This is not a do-it-yourself process. And by the way, if you delay and you miss the deadline of 60 days, you get to start all over and get back in line. In some parts of the United States, it's taking over a year just to get that application assigned to a claims examiner. And you don't want to have to get back in that line, if you will, to start all over again. So what are the 3 criteria for establishing that your medical condition meets the definition of disability? So again, this is technical, but one of the first hurdles we have to overcome. The Social Security Administration requires that you have all of the following. Number 1, a severe medical condition. Your medical condition or the totality of your medical conditions has to interfere with basic work activity and daily activities. For example, if you have a back condition that prevents you from standing at the assembly line or standing at a kitchen sink, your back condition might be severe enough to qualify for Social Security disability. Number 2, you have to have a long-term medical condition. In other words, it must have lasted or be expected to last for at least a year. So if your back condition, for example, has caused you to have surgery, you probably will be disabled for at least a year. Now, I have people who have total hips replacements, and they call me and say, well, I want to file a claim because I'm a month out of surgery and I'm still having problems. And I'm saying, well, Social Security is going to issue a denial because you may not have been disabled for at least a year. So call me back when you're having complications. The same thing with a stroke. Now, in the terms of a stroke, Social Security thinks that people will recover from the residuals of a stroke in a year. In those cases, I'm more inclined to go ahead and file a claim, knowing it's going to take over a year before the claims examiner is assigned. But I tell my prospective clients, look, we may have to pull that application if you recover. And I've had clients who had strokes that are out for 2 years and then go back to work. So we have a closed period of time. So that's an important factor. Now, the third question is, are we totally disabled or do we have an inability to engage in substantial gainful activity? Social Security does not pay for partial disability. Now, you can work and apply for Social Security benefits so long as you're earning under the $1,550 per month gross, which is current for 2024. That number changes every year, and the Social Security Administration has very special rules to determine whether or not your activity is considered substantial gainful activity. If you exceed the money or earnings limit, it doesn't matter how disabled you are. Social Security is going to say you're not entitled to benefits. And ultimately, what you can end up being eligible for is SSI. Now, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about the 5-step sequential evaluation. Got it? Let's take a break.